A terrifying incident, a haunting story. It was an ordinary evening in the small town of Crescent Falls, nestled in the heart of New England. The streets were lined with maple trees, their autumn leaves scattered across the sidewalks. I was walking home alone after spending a long day at the local library. The air was crisp and the fading sunlight painted the sky in shades of amber and gold. As I passed by the park, I noticed a woman sitting on a bench under the dim glow of a street lamp. She appeared to be in her late 30s, wearing a long coat and clutching a tattered book. Her lips moved as she read something aloud, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. Intrigued, I hesitated for a moment before deciding to sit down on a nearby bench to rest. That's when everything changed. The atmosphere grew heavy, and an inexplicable chill settled over me. The woman's whispers seemed to grow louder, though her lips barely moved. A wave of unease washed over me, so I quickly stood up and hurried home, not daring to look back. When I arrived, my father, David, was waiting in the living room. His stern face softened into concern as he asked why I looked so shaken. When I told him what had happened, his expression darkened. He scolded me for not coming straight home and warned me to stay away from strangers acting oddly. I brushed off his concern, chalking it up to an overreaction. Little did I know, that encounter would mark the beginning of a harrowing experience that would haunt my family forever. Later that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The room felt colder than usual, and every creak of the old house made me jump. I eventually fell into a restless sleep, only to wake up drenched in sweat from a vivid nightmare. In it, the woman from the park was standing at the foot of my bed, her eyes glowing unnaturally as she whispered something incomprehensible. The next morning, my father decided to take me to see Mr. Clarence, a spiritual elder in our community known for his wisdom and experience with the supernatural. After listening to my story, he looked grave. He explained that the woman I had seen was likely invoking something malevolent, and my presence might have inadvertently attracted its attention. He performed a protective ritual and prepared a remedy for me to drink, instructing me to consume it at dusk. By the grace of God, the oppressive feeling lifted after that, though I would sometimes see fleeting glimpses of the woman in my dreams. Her image lingered like a shadow in the back of my mind, but life returned to a semblance of normalcy. 2 years later, another terrifying incident shook our family to its core. My younger brother, Ethan, who was 16 at the time, became the center of an unexplainable and horrifying experience. It was a quiet Saturday evening when I decided to take Ethan and our youngest brother, Liam, to the mall. We wandered through the stores, laughing and joking as we explored the latest gadgets and trendy outfits. Eventually, we stumbled upon a newly opened haunted house attraction. Liam, ever the thrill seeker, insisted we go in. Ethan was hesitant but didn't want to be left out. The haunted house was dark and filled with eerie sounds and animatronic figures that seemed to come alive. Ethan clung to my arm, visibly terrified, while Liam led the way, unfazed. After about 10 minutes, Ethan began to hyperventilate, so we decided to leave before he passed out. On the way home, he remained unusually quiet, staring out the window with a vacant expression. When we arrived, I noticed Ethan's forehead was burning up. We rushed him to an urgent care clinic, where the doctor diagnosed him with a fever and prescribed some medication. Back home, our mother, Linda, was furious that I had taken him to such a place. She insisted Ethan sleep in her room so she could keep an eye on him. Our house, a spacious, colonial-style home with 6 bedrooms and a large yard, was usually a place of comfort and safety. We had a family tradition of turning off all the lights at night to conserve energy leaving the house in complete darkness. That night, however, darkness became our enemy. Around 3:20 a.m., my mother woke up feeling parched. As she made her way to the kitchen to get a glass of water, she happened to glance out the window at the yard. Nothing seemed amiss, but when she turned back toward her room, she froze. Ethan's bed was empty. Panic set in as she heard the faint sound of dragging coming from the hallway. Rushing toward the noise, she was met with a horrifying sight. Ethan was being dragged across the floor by an invisible force, his limp body moving toward the main door. My mother screamed and lunged forward, grabbing his legs in an attempt to stop the movement. As she pulled, an unseen force began to drag her along with Ethan. She recited prayers, her voice trembling and weak. The strength of the entity was inhuman, and she felt herself being pulled closer to the door. With tears streaming down her face, she cried out to God for protection. At that moment, the force released its grip, sending her tumbling backward against the wall. Her screams woke the entire household. We rushed to the hallway to find her clutching Ethan, who was unconscious and bleeding from a gash on his forehead. My mother's face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. We wasted no time getting Ethan to the hospital, where he remained under observation for several days. When he finally woke up, his account sent chills down our spines. Ethan described seeing a massive, shadowy figure looming over him as he slept. It reached out with elongated arms, grabbing him and pulling him toward a dark void. He said he tried to scream but couldn't move or make a sound. The last thing he remembered was the sensation of being lifted off the ground before everything went black. This incident was a turning point for our family. We sought the help of Pastor Gregory, a well-respected religious leader in our town. He visited our home, performing blessings and prayers in every room. According to him, Ethan might have attracted the entity's attention due to his gentle nature, love for colognes, and his habit of looking impeccably dressed, qualities that, he said, sometimes draw spirits who are either curious or malevolent. For months after the incident, Ethan experienced strange occurrences. He would feel someone lightly touching his shoulder or back when no one was around. On one occasion, he was lifted a few feet off the ground while sitting alone in his room, only to be dropped abruptly. These events left us all on edge, but they gradually diminished as we continued to seek spiritual guidance and keep our home well lit at night. This ordeal changed our family's perspective on the supernatural. What we once dismissed as superstition became a stark reality we could no longer ignore. To this day, we take precautions to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. The lights stay on at night, and we never leave Ethan alone, no matter how safe the situation seems. Thank you for listening to our story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and click the bell icon for notifications. Your support means the world to us, and we'll continue sharing stories that remind us all of the mysterious and unexplainable forces that exist in the world.